Welcome to the Vertical Go-to-Market Podcast, where you'll discover new opportunities to grow your business from 7 figures to 8 from the world's most successful agency and B2B SaaS executives. I'm your host, Corey Quinn. Let's jump into the show. Hey guys, I am joined today by Nick Petrosky. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks for having me. It's really good to be here. Good to see you again, too.
Yeah, likewise. I think the last time we saw each other in person was in New Orleans.
Yes. Great city, by the way. It was a good time.
Beautiful. Yeah, we were there for the Bureau of Digital Owner Summit. It was a great experience. It was great to see you on stage. You are the founder of Promethean Research. Could you tell the audience a little bit about what you do there?
Yeah, so I started Promethean back in 2015, and it came out of this need for better research and better data-backed advice for digital agencies. And since then, we've helped over 100 digital agencies grow, and I help with things like strategy building and making sure that you're pointed in the right direction, and that everybody on your team is also pointed in the right direction. I stop at operations though, so if you have ops questions, we got to find somebody else for you.
So today we're going to cover. So when we were in New Orleans with Carl Smith, who's actually on the stream right now. What's up, Carl? When we were out there, you were on stage sharing with the audience of agency owners the 2023 Digital Agency Industry Report. And in the audience, I was blown away by the quality of the content. Just the insights were super rock solid. So I wanted to bring you on to the podcast and to LinkedIn Live so that we could share this great research and these insights with a broader audience. So today, I believe you're going to go through the top 10 insights from your 2023 Digital Agency Industry Report.
Yeah. So I went through and I just highlighted everything, and that I thought was like pretty important to get a really good, like the whole purpose of the report is to have some kind of baseline to understand like, where's this industry at? And so I went through and just highlighted it, and that's what we're going to run through today.
Beautiful. Well, without further ado, I have one piece of housekeeping, and then we can jump into it. So the only piece of housekeeping here is we encourage questions. Nick would love any of your questions along the way. However, what we encourage you to do is just to add them into the comment section, and then we will, once we get through the top 10 insights, we'll circle back to the Q&A. So if you have a question along the way, just go ahead and pop it into the comments, and we'll circle back to it following the top 10 insights. With that being done, I'll pass it off to you, Nick.
Sweet. Let me get my screen shared here. Perfect. So welcome to the report, everyone. The first thing I want to chat about is kind of how this report came to be before I dive right into it. This is something that it's kind of a working living document that I've been updating throughout the years. So a lot of this will have, there are some of the trends in here that I'm calling out are stuff that kind of always happens in the industry, but it's important to kind of have a sense of, are they happening more? Is this something we should care more about? Or is this something that's kind of fading out that maybe we've heard for years that we shouldn't care about as much because it's not as impactful? So with that, I want to start with, an idea of how big the market is. So a few years ago, I don't remember exactly when, maybe 2020. Time's kind of fake recently, so we'll see when this really happened. But a few years ago, we went and we just counted the number of digital agencies that we could find. And that was expensive and it took a long time. But we got to a spot where in the US, there were something like 30-some thousand digital agencies in the US and Canada. And we segmented this by their service mix and what they were doing to make sure that they were actually a digital agency and they fit our definition. And then we redid that because I like to spend money, I guess. And we redid that last year. Or early this year, and we found that there are now about 45,000 digital agencies in the U.S. and Canada, and that's some insane growth for just a few years. So it's an in-demand industry that a lot of people want to be a part of, and one of the big challenges is it's essentially zero barriers to entry. You can spin up a digital shop in, a week,
Mm.
and be 45,001 if you want to be. So that's the first thing, is to understand that this group of companies uh, is expanding. There's more coming in every day.
That's awesome. That's like that's like a 50% increase. Oh, sorry. Yeah. 50
Yes.
increase. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's sizable.
Yeah.
And one of the big things driving this is the spend that digital agencies clients are dumping into this nebulous thing called digital transformation. It's kind of like an umbrella for whatever you want it to be, if it's connected to a computer or related to a computer.
Mm.
And the spend there, we look to IDC to kind of get this data. This is higher than my pay grade, so we look to them, and they're forecasting through 2026 a 16% CAGR,
Mm.
compound annual growth rate. So every year, on average, the spend in digital transformation will be growing 16%,
Mm.
um, which is close, as you'll see later. It's closely in line with what the growth rate for the overall industry is. So this is driving, any spend that they have on new customer experience initiatives, new websites, new, as the money shifts more towards digital advertising from traditional advertising, things like business process automation, automating other things, like all of that falls under this, and that spend is just growing tremendously. And then we have the advent of artificial intelligence, and this is nice because I'm actually, this morning I was putting some finishing touches on the latest AI report we have, and as part of that report, I asked, what kind of impacts are you seeing? We asked a bunch of agency owners, what, like, if you had to quantify what kind of productivity gains that you're actually getting, how would you quantify that? And the results were astounding.
Mm.
So first off, I'm going off script here a little bit, but
Yeah.
this is important information.
Sure.
First off, we're super early still.
Mm.
I built a bit of a benchmarking maturity calculator that will benchmark each individual agency, and I get a sense of where the market is, and we're still crazy early in how far agencies are in integrating AI tools into their business. With that said, even though we're crazy early, the productivity gains that agencies are seeing are crazy high. They're anywhere from like 20 to 40%. Um, and that is enough to absolutely blow margins out of the water. Like the ability, the efficiency potential on this kind of stuff is absolutely mind blowing.
Mm.
So back to this slide. Uh, Early on, early in this year, we saw just over half of the companies um, using some kind of AI tools. That number in our latest survey was already up to 89%
Mm.
within just a few months. So it's stuff is moving very fast.
Awesome. I have some
Um,
follow-up questions on that. I'll wait till the end there. That's super interesting.
yeah, yeah. Uh, Agency maturation. So when I think about how mature an agency is, I think about things like, as a quick, like, litmus test for understanding it. It's what metrics are they using to track, or what are they tracking in their business, and then what metrics are they using to manage their business? Which ones do they actually look to when they're making a decision? And this is from Soda. They did some great research earlier in the year. They always do great research, but they did some particularly earlier last year on which metrics agency owners were tracking. And if you look at that bottom axis, it doesn't go to 100.
Mm.
So less than 50% even forecast their revenue. Um, there's a lot of best practices in this industry that have not disseminated to those 45,000 agencies. There are a lot that are operating. Um, I don't want to say just like kind of on the fly, but they're doing it in a way that isn't exactly systematized. And what that creates is a hell of a lot of stress for
Mm.
the owners and the managers in that space. So as we've been tracking this for not I mean, not the full time we've been in business, but we've been tracking it for a few years now. And we've slowly seen this march towards more sophistication in the industry, higher maturity levels. And we've seen it through just one stat is the number of agencies tracking utilization rates. That it, 5 years ago, that was like new to a lot of these agencies. That was a word that was you know not thought of. That was for consultants to worry about and lawyers to worry about and all these other things. Um, Now we're finding that I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was around three quarters of agencies are now tracking their utilization rates. This billable utilization in this SOTA study is from obviously February 2022, so it's a little out of date at this point. Next up, we have kind of a change in agency margins. So what we have here is the average margin profile of a digital shop, um, and you've if you look over the last 3 years,
Hmm.
you've had crazy inflationary pressure. You've had average salaries growing significantly, partially because of that um, inflationary pressure, and partially because the amount of demand around digital transformation stuff. When COVID hit, every company initially hunkered down, and then they go, "Oh wait, we can go online. Oh wait, our online experience is horrible." So they instantly were like, "Oh man, okay, who do we hire? Let's go work with an agency." And agencies had to staff up, and so there was this mad dash for talent,
Hmm.
and that pushed salaries higher. And salaries are the expense at a digital agency.
Sure.
Yeah, you don't have other like a computer, like, even if it's a $5,000 $10,000 Mac Pro or something stupid like that. Um, that's a drop in the bucket compared to the 120K you're paying for a sales director or a marketing expert.
Yeah.
Um, so with that said, a lot of shifts have conspired essentially to weigh on margins, and we're seeing that I have this little flag here that says update. AI is changing this. It absolutely has the potential to,
Mhm.
and I think that you know salaries once they go up, they don't come back down. Inflation once it goes up, it doesn't come back down. Like hopefully we don't have a deflationary environment, so it'll slow, but it won't come back. So what we have at our disposal, the tools that we have at our disposal, are essentially going to be efficiency gains through AI, hopefully, um, and maybe some pricing power. But we've seen that diminish a little bit recently,
Hmm.
also.
Quick question. I'm going to jump in if it's okay with
Yeah,
you, Nick. Um,
absolutely.
are you seeing any evidence that agencies are having to raise prices um, in order to keep up with these inflationary and these increases in salary issues?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna talk about that I have a slide on that somewhere.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, we definitely saw over the last 2 years, the average has jumped. I look at things in price bands,
Yeah.
and so I believe it was like 150, 125 to 150 per revenue per hour, was the going billing rate, was the average billing rate. And then in 2022, I think that was up to 150 to 175. Um, and I kind of don't think it's going to go much higher than that, but we'll
Mhm.
see early next year.
Okay.
I just did a newsletter yesterday on the challenging pipelines a lot of shops are seeing, and it's really like my key takeaway was it's probably not you. Like a lot of shops are having a heck of a time right now, and
Mm.
it's really there's some economic forces at play that are making things a lot more difficult than they should be.
Mm.
But what that does is that makes raising prices a lot more difficult.
Yep. Makes sense.
So next up is talent retention and acquisition. Um, we do a survey with the Bureau of Digital every year, and in that we ask, what's your outlook on hiring? How difficult do you think it's going to be? And the significantly harder crowd since 2009 has gotten much higher. Um, it's not easy to find qualified talent, and I mean that's your main asset. Like, our people are our assets. Like, that's a real thing here. That's not just like some CEO spouting it. Um, that's what a company's hiring when they hire you.
Can I ask
So
a detailed
yeah,
question? I don't know if you're going to cover this, but
absolutely.
is it more technical specifically? The people who have a technical specialty in a type of marketing, like TikTok videos, or is it more sort of account managers or salespeople, or is it really just across the board?
So we ask a general kind of how hiring
Mhm.
is difficult or how difficult will hiring be. We also, I don't think we asked this recently, but we used to ask, where do you feel will be the most difficult? Like if we break this out into like functional groups and we look at it that way, like is it devs, is it designers, is it account managers? And by far, it's devs. Devs are incredibly difficult to grab because how's an agency going to fight Facebook over paying a dev? You're not. Like you have to work on your ability to offer them like a better quality of life, a
Yeah.
better like you're working with cooler brands. Maybe you're not living on the Facebook campus or whatever the heck they have. You compete on different ways other than salary, but it's
Mhm.
still salary is a big thing. I mean, it's very tough uh, as an employee to be offered 2x your salary and go, no, 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 no. I like quality of life right now. Like that's unless they're very senior and they've made their money like
Yeah.
independently wealthy, then
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm. Makes sense.
Um, oh, this is a good one. So
Mm.
async work. That's something that kind of came out of this whole remote work thing and this shift to offshore and nearshore talent. A lot of there were a few agencies that I had worked with who pre-pandemic they were already fully remote. They were already working across 5 time zones, and they had systems in place to make that work. And a lot of what that was understanding that you cannot all be having a conversation together and get answers back instantly. You have to be able to kind of go to this source, get what you need, and then do your work and then return it to the source. And then the next person does that and you work asynchronously. Um, that seems like that's going to like getting that right and that process right. That seems like that's going to be the key to really making this work because remote work's not going anywhere. I put some stat in here. We did a survey on remote work, and agencies are staying pat on that. They're not moving. If they're remote now, they're expecting to be remote for the next 3 years at least.
Mhm.
And I did it on a sliding scale. So I said, like, are you fully remote, partially hybrid, mostly on site, or fully on site? Zero people, zero agencies were fully on site. And very few, I mean, it was single digit percentages were mostly on site. And they were the larger legacy ones anyway. So
Sure.
as this moves forward, like as that 45,000 gets larger, they're not going to be behemoths on site with a giant office.
Sure. I think, it's an interesting comment around working synchronously versus asynchronously and how the agencies, how they used to work, let's say, certainly before COVID in general, was heavily synchronous. I would say, just in my own experience, the expectation is that you're in the office every single day. And that part of that culture is, that you're there physically. And now, obviously, with COVID, that changed everything. And the other quick thought was that a lot of the people who are talk about systems and productivity are really focused on. There's a lot of authors and people who focus on this topic talk about things like deep work and working asynchronously, and these are new concepts I think to a lot of agencies. But to your point, that's part of the new sort of motion when it comes to being able to operate as an agency, specifically as they're leveraging overseas talent in different time zones and whatnot.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a great point. It also kinda goes back to that, like, that talent conversation or that talent slide. Like, yeah, it's getting harder to hire. How do you compete with someone like Zoom who's hiring your devs away? Well, tell them they don't have to go back to an office,
Mm,
and you're gonna be
yeah.
miles ahead already.
Yeah. It's funny. Yep.
So next up, we have I called it the start of the 4-day work week. It's not, according to our survey.
Yeah.
Um, it's maybe 5% of the shops had actually experimented with this, and this was in the first quarter of the year. So I want to say March or April, and it was looking back at the last year. So there weren't many people experimenting with it, but there was some interest, and there's been a lot of talk about this in the industry. There's I've seen guides on how to do it right, and how what kind of like how's your profitability going to be impacted if you do it. Um, and so it seems like this is another one of those arrows in the quiver of fighting big tech on talent.
Mm.
Um, and if you can pull it off, great. I'm very interested in diving deeper into it and exploring it a bit more. Um, but I have not seen this actually turn into any kind of like big force driving the industry yet, like it was touted to be at the end of last year.
What do you think is the allure of the 4-day work week? Like, why is that a thing in your mind?
Um, One of the things that I hear a lot from some project management friends is just how burnt out literally everyone feels. And if you can kind of if you can solve that somehow, even a little bit, through giving them another day off, um, you're going to have a happier, more well-adjusted team. And that is something I'm working on a repeatable Revgen guide. I wrote one years ago, and it's so long in the tooth that it's embarrassing. It's still on my site, so I'm rewriting it, and I have some subject matter experts I invited in to kind of help with it. And one of the things they pointed out was just how much having a happy, engaged team matters when it comes to client experience. And it's backed by data. It's not just like, oh, I feel this. It's actually you will grow faster, and you will have happier clients, and they will refer you more if you have happy employees working with them. And so I really think the idea of a 4-day work week kind of all culminates around that. How do we treat people better, and how
Mm.
do we make it so they're not just feeling burnt out and like like that their work doesn't matter.
Makes sense.
Next up, in housing and marketing spend. So this is from the Gartner CMO spend survey, and I pull these numbers every year that they publish it, and just kind of track it over time to see how it changes. And this is what CMOs how they're expecting to allocate their budgets every year. And if you look at that last column, it says agency services. And it dipped in the first 2007 to 2019, and at that point, this is one of those things I was talking about. Like maybe we shouldn't worry as much about this anymore. Um, this was something that people were like they're seeing that trend of everything moving in house, and they were getting scared, and on the agency side.
Mm.
And since then, we've seen kind of this return to baseline of about a quarter of the budget is dedicated to agency spend. And what's interesting to me here is what drives this. You have a big behemoth brand that has a floor of people that their budget compared to an agency's might as well be unlimited.
Mm.
Uh, it's not, but functionally it is. Um, and so why would they ever hire an agency? Yeah, aside from cover on the sea levels, like aside from that, like what's the real reason that they would hire somebody? And it's really because the rate of change of new tech and the rate of change of capabilities is so fast in this space that if that brand can get another point of growth or another quarter point of margin by implementing a new tech faster than the brand next to it, and that agency can be up on that tech or that capability faster than the in-house team, and they usually are, uh, they're going to go with that agency and get that extra point or quarter point of margin every single time. So the whole thing that drives these agencies and these new agencies popping up really is the rate of change of technology. Um, and as you see that increase, AI is a great example. But I mean, you had big data behind, or before that, you had um, I hate to mention it, you had cryptocurrency, you had blockchain tech.
NFT.
Before
Yeah.
that, yeah, you had NFTs. People were buying monkey pictures. So you had this stuff's just nonsense, but you have other stuff that's making a difference. Uh, and so you see this rate of change, and I don't see it slowing down, right? Like I'm not going to bet against the rate of change of new
Mm-mm.
technology.
Nope.
That'd be silly.
Yeah.
So I see this as one of those trends that like people were worried about a little while ago that I wouldn't worry so much about, especially if you have, like to your point on specialization,
Yeah.
which I don't know if we've talked about it yet or not, but w- what you do around the specialization, like that's the bread and butter on this thing. Like specializing in a space that is new and that is, driving new capabilities at a brand, you're going to be set.
Yeah. I think one other thing that comes to mind as it relates to just the rate of change is the number of places that if you're trying to be relevant online today, especially from a content perspective, there are so many platforms to try and keep up with. Like you need to be on Threads and X or Twitter, and you need to be on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. It's just like the scope of it is tremendous, and each of them are sort of nuanced. And that's another thing that's not. I don't anticipate getting any simpler, but instead just getting more and more complex.
Yeah. That's a great point. It'd be nice if it was simpler.
I know,
That'd be fantastic.
right? What
I'd
happens is
love
just
to not have
being
to
on
think about
Facebook. That's it. That's all we needed, but apparently
it.
not.
There you go. Maybe my mom will like this post.
Yeah.
Uh, Next up, a shifting fragmented market. That's
Mhm.
flowery language for basically saying the size, even though the whole group of agencies, the number of agencies is growing, the actual size of the average agency has gotten bigger, which is kind of astounding to me. I would
Hmm.
have thought these new agencies are coming in and they're going to be, 5-person shops. They're not going to be big at all. Um, but we're seeing growth in each of the size cohorts, where
Hmm.
we're seeing average agency size go up pretty substantially, just over the last 5 years.
That is interesting. I don't know if you collect this data, but is there a correlation between years in business and size?
I have looked at that, and there's not. What's
Okay.
weird is I've seen businesses in our surveys that are 20 years old, 30 years old. They were legacy media. They were legacy ad companies that like transitioned into digital at like the dot-com boom. I was like not in high school when they switched over and it started doing digital. And and now they're still killing it, but they're doing it with 15, 20 people. They've hit their size that they want to hit, and they don't care to get big.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a lot of here's a cool aside, ADD brain.
Mm.
The If you think of the average kind of owner in this space, there's someone who's really good at the craft, typically. They're either a dev or a designer or a marketer that had a really, unique skill set and said, I'm going to go do this myself. And then they did. And when they have to divorce themselves from the day to day, when they move away from the value creation, that was something that they really loved. Um, they get unhappy a lot of times. A lot of times they just don't like. That's not why they're in it. They were in it because they wanted to do cool work for good brands and work with nice people.
Yeah.
And once that kind of switch, once that calculus changes, um, it it's very difficult to reset. So I think when you look at these companies, there's a proclivity to stay smaller so they can stay closer to that value creation and doing the cool stuff that they got in there, from the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was just a cool one, showing kind of the shifts in growth rates over the years. Um, It's been pretty solid mid to low teens, since about 2015, and that tracks with that digital spend, right, that we looked at earlier. That was a 16% CAGR. Most of these are just under that, with the exception of 2021, which was an insane year for digital shops.
Hmm.
Um, growing at an average rate of 25% was mind blowing. I didn't believe the numbers when I first looked at the survey data. I actually had to go recheck stuff to make sure there wasn't some weird anomaly in how I was tracking it.
That's amazing. 25%.
It was fantastically high. Um, and I think it was that pull forward in digital transformation spend,
Mm-hmm.
right? Every company goes, we got to go digital. So they're like, well, we're going to spend, yeah, I don't know, what 16% more this year. We'll double it. And then they did. And something interesting here, from our last survey, we looked at horizontal specialization and vertical specialization. Did you or didn't you? Did you have an industry that you focused on? Did you have a service mix that you focused on? Or were you a pure generalist? Did you kind of do whatever's necessary for whoever was interested? And what we found was that the ones that specialized by both vertical and horizontal, they grew twice as fast as the pure generalists. They grew at
Wait,
20% last year.
wait. Hold on, Nick. Could you say that again?
I I feel like I have to because this was astounding to me.
Yeah.
They grew twice as fast.
Yeah.
If you specialize, if you actually like focus on a core group of industries, you develop expertise. You know this.
Mm-hmm.
If you focus on a core set of services and value creation for those industries, you, they grew at 20% last year. Um, the gravy train of digital transformation didn't stop for them like it did for so many others.
Yeah. Well, I'm, as you know, Nick, and potentially some of the audience here, that I'm a big believer in the power of specializing in a specific vertical or multiple verticals. So it's always great to see and hear when the data can support that, that it is that it's not only a viable way to build your agency, but it actually is a potentially a competitive advantage.
Absolutely. It's always nice when the data hits with
Yeah,
your life's work.
I know.
When it changes and you have to reassess, that could be rough.
Yeah, it's always dynamic.
Yeah. Hourly rates. So here's what we were talking about a little bit earlier.
Yep.
And this is where was this band? Okay, so we had some clustering. If we look at the blue, was 2021, and that was around 125 to 149 an hour. And then the most was 150 to 174. And then had another good chunk at 175 to 199 an hour.
Hmm.
And then red is the next year, 2022. And that curve kind of shifted to the right. And then yellow, this 2023 curve, shifted even further to the right. And so
Yeah.
we're seeing this base kind of rate of 175 to 199. And I want I don't want the takeaway for this to be, oh no, we need to go charge 200 an hour, because that's not it. I have a benchmarking service that incorporates pricing for you. I will find out what your price should be if you would like.
Mhm.
Do not just use this and jump to 200 an hour. What this does tell you though is if your pricing uh, hasn't changed in the last 2 years, you need to find a way to bump it because
Mhm.
you're charging too low, and that is going to crush your margins and absolutely eliminate any options you have and make growing a company just incredibly harder.
And part of the drivers of that are things you mentioned earlier, which is just the overall inflation, salaries are going up, it's difficult to find good work. All of those things compound into this situation where there's kind of this pressure to raise prices.
Yeah, yeah, inflation and the demand for digital.
Mm. Yeah.
It really, like, if you can unlock that kind of capability that through your positioning the company or your clients believe no one else can or very few others can, you can charge premiums for that. Next up, Revgen investment. So I
Mm.
talked a little bit about that repeatable Revgen guide I'm redoing, and part of that is because so much of my work over the years has come down to helping shops kind of fix or better align or better structure how they generate revenue. And one of the things that I've noticed is the severe underinvestment in Revgen. I have here that most will spend about 7% of their revenue on RevGen and activities. So that's sales, marketing, biz dev, account management. That includes salaries and that includes ad budgets or whatever it is. Um, but when you look at that and you look at what some of the growth goals are for these companies, and they say, well, average growth is say 15% a year. We want to grow at 20 to 30% a year. That's fine as long as you make the investment to do it.
Hmm.
If you're trying to squeeze that blood from a stone and you have one salesperson working like crazy to try to get you the 30% growth annually, it's not going to work. It's going to frustrate everybody. So hopefully that guide's going to come out sometime in September.
Hmm.
Hopefully what it does is it helps kind of set the stage for how you can build this kind of repeatable RevGen process at any size. You again, you shouldn't really hire anybody in RevGen if you're under 10 employees. Like that's the owner's show. You should be doing that yourself. But
Hmm.
once you get into like 15, 20, I break out which positions typically get hired first and what they do and all that kind of stuff. Um, that's super critical to get right. And it just makes
Yeah.
everything else easier. It gets
I,
rid of that like that boom and bust cycle that so many go
sure.
through.
Yeah, it's very common. So I'm interested to see in that report when it comes out, like what is the breakout of salaried or services or support in the marketing slash sales relative to ad spend. I don't know if that's broken out in there, but just how much, where should they be investing? Should they be investing in people and ad spend both, and then what
And
that
you
looks
just
like.
gave me more work, but that's a really good question. So
Sorry.
the thing, if you're asking it, someone else is gonna, and it's
Yeah.
better to have it in the report
Good.
than
Good. I
ask
love
Nick
that.
100 times. So I
Thank you.
appreciate that, I guess.
Sure. My pleasure. I'm here to serve.
Moving on before you give me even more work.
Hmm.
Agency profitability. Um, Average margins. What can you realistically earn? There was a there are blog posts out there and different articles and stuff that I've seen over the years that are saying like, oh, your average net income should be 30%. And that has set such a bad bar for agency owners to try to emulate. And I hope what this slide does is shed a little light on what the average shop actually is earning. The industry as a whole is going to earn around 16% margins. And so if you're at 10%, there's a few things to tweak, but it's not the end of the world. You're not a third of where you should be at, right? You're two-thirds of the way there actually.
Just a quick question about definitions. So
Mhm.
revenue. So by profit, do you mean EBIT? Basically, revenue minus the selling cost, minus the ad spend, minus the
Yeah, that's a
service.
good point. Yes. So any kind of pass-through spend is removed from revenue.
Yeah,
So this will be a clean revenue, and then um, any kind of this would be net income after taxes
great.
is what we
Yep.
track.
EBIT. Yep.
So
Perfect.
so just one south of EBIT.
Mm.
And then finally, um, since we are just talking about margins, it's good to understand just what has happened with salaries,
Mm.
agency's biggest costs. And most of the positions have grown 25 to 35%
Mm.
between 2019 and 2022. And that's just a lot to bite off. Yeah, with literally everything else going on, even with the price increases we've seen, they helped offset some of that. They actually helped offset a lot of that. But you do have a group of agencies that hit that perfect storm of they didn't raise pricing, but they raised salaries because they had to. They had to compete or retain talent, and they're in a really rough position now because it's very difficult to raise pricing dramatically. Yeah, you can do minimal or small steps every year, and having those conversations every time a retainer renews. That's much easier. Obviously, do it 3 months before, but that's easier to do than it is to say, oh, yeah, we were billing you 125. It's going to be 200 an hour next year. Good luck paying us.
Yeah.
So that is all I've got. Did anybody have any questions, or do you have any questions, or did anything
Yeah.
spark some interest?
I,
I'm gonna stop
I,
sharing.
yeah. Awesome. So first off, all of this is amazing. And for someone who is passionate about the agency space, like myself and yourself, all this stuff is just like food for the soul. So thank you so much for putting all this together and for sharing it. There was a couple questions in the chat, and I apologize for folks that for some reason I'm unable to chat back to you in LinkedIn. I am on the Facebook Live, but I'm sorry, on Facebook, YouTube Live, excuse me, but unable to chat back into LinkedIn. So we have one here. It's a LinkedIn user who's asking, have you looked at how resourcing costs have impacted agencies' ability to retain and win new clients?
I have not.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
don't have the answer to that.
Okay. All right, man, that's fair. Cool. I think those are the big ones. I had another question here, which was relating, going back to the AI. Was there any? Do you have any insights, either anecdotally or in the report, around where the productivity gains are being had when it comes to AI? Where is this happening within agencies? Where is the productivity gains?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. In the report, I break out I break out where companies are by functional area.
Mm,
So have they implemented AI more in devs or in their marketing process or in their account man, like all of those. And what I've found, again, this will be described better or more fully in the final
mm,
report.
sure.
Um, but it's really kind of in line with how the tools came out. So we saw content marketing tools really early, right? I think Jasper was around before ChatGPT, like a year before or something like that. Maybe it was
Yeah.
called Jarvis back then. I don't know. They
Hmm.
flipped a few times. But you had these content marketing tools, and so that those are really easy to integrate when the tools are good, or even when they have a good UX. Um, so we've seen more advanced usage in things like content marketing, coding with Copilot, with GitHub's Copilot. We've seen different use cases. People are using it for pair programming, for bug checking, um, automating different stuff in marketing. Uh, you have some robust marketing automation tools already, but when you can add in AI stuff to that, they're seeing a lot of productivity gains there.
Sure.
Some of the coding ones that I talked to, like the dev shops, early on, they were saying they're seeing stuff anywhere from 50 to 100% more production than they were pre-AI tools. And
Okay.
something like that it's just insane when you know, if you can get that across an agency, like there's no margin issues anymore.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. Really.
Yeah. That's awesome, Nick. So, before we wrap up here, where is a good place for people to get in touch with you? And I want to know more about where people can get access to this, this upcoming report.
Yeah, I really think the best way to find me is through LinkedIn at this
Mhm.
point. That's going to be the easiest. Just shoot me a message, connect with me, do whatever. Just put in the thing that, like, hey, I saw you on the the podcast, so I know you're not going to try to sell me life insurance in a day. Um, but yeah, LinkedIn's the easiest. If not, our website, prometheanresearch.com.
Yeah.
I do a newsletter bi-weekly, and that's always got everything they're working on. It's got new survey opportunities. That's got new research that comes out. Um, Everything's really included in there. But those two places
Beautiful.
are easiest.
And are you open to sharing this report that we just went
Oh yeah.
through with folks who maybe want to kind of thumb through it and look at it more deeply?
Absolutely. Just like I said, connect with me on LinkedIn, or
Great.
if we are already connected, shoot me a message and just say, hey, I'd like the report, and I'll send it over to you.
Beautiful. Anything else? Any final last words, Nick, before we wrap up?
Um, I I think the big takeaway is it's got its lumps, but it's a really attractive industry. There's
Mhm.
a lot of really interesting, cool stuff going on in it, and there's a lot of opportunity. And it's fascinating to see how people navigate it.
Yeah.
I love just watching it. Really,
Yeah, me too. I love the industry. I love the people in it, and it's a very bright future ahead. So, Nick,
absolutely,
thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all this wisdom and insights. It's been really great.
absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Cool.